lot of people in our industry have been talking about deregulation, and I'm here to speak on it. Well, I think our industry really needs to tighten up and get better, or just eliminate it altogether. And I'm here to hopefully tighten it up and make it better and make it stronger. The board should conduct inspections of these establishments and make sure that only licensed persons practicing barbering and cosmetology can uphold the standards in the highest regard. It is absurd and demeaning for any individual to think that it is possible to provide quality, skilled services without the training equal to the countless hours that many of us have dedicated our entire careers to uphold the laws and regulations set forth to protect the public. The reason I think the regulation is even being discussed is because I feel the cosmetologists see no value in many of the state boards that exist in this country. The fact that there are no uniform standards nationwide, the fact that reciprocity is chaos, and the fact that the pass-fail rate of most cosmetology tests is all over the place are contributing factors. In a little bit of research I've done, I have found no state board regulations that I'm in full agreement with. So what can we do? We can develop a list of standards and give a date of implementation in order for all salons, barbershops, and nail salons to comply. We can establish a continuing education program, continuing education hours program. A program like this will solidify the fact that the state of Louisiana is propelling our cosmetologists to better themselves every year, and therefore bettering the industry. This type of program is a great way to ensure that the industry continues to grow. How many states require this? Does anyone know? Just a few, right? Lawyers and nurses do it, so why can't we? You know? Cleanliness and sanitation. I think the third thing that we can do is to establish a cleanliness infectious disease standard. Does barbicide work? Well, we all think that it does, right? But what if it just stays in those containers and present on the counters? Like, is anyone checking the fact that it's just been sitting there? You know, it's blue water. It's blue water, right? But is it clean blue water? So how clean is that barbicide that is sitting on the counter? What about hepatitis, lice, staph infections, blood-borne infections, hepatitis, fecal matter? Or are we checking for this? And how often are we checking for it? And are our shampoo bowls, chairs, toilets, and doorknobs being checked? License compliance. What happens if you were doing hair without a license? What would happen if a doctor was practicing without a license? Is the fine or punishment a real deterrent? What happens if you turn someone in who is illegally doing hair? Do we have a hotline for this? Well, we don't have a hotline because I know several people, and I tried to make a complaint, and it was like I had to fill out this paperwork, and I had to put my name, and I had to fill out, I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, I know people going around checking for licenses. Why couldn't they, if I give you an address, why couldn't you, when you're out and about, go and check? You know, I mean, I shouldn't have to like fill out two pieces of paper to give someone to protect my industry. You know, I just think it's kind of silly. A sanitation and license grading system can be developed. With this sanitation and license grading system in place, the consumers and potential new hires would be advised if the said hair salon meets or exceeds our nation's toughest standards. Many restaurants in New York and Los Angeles do the same type of thing. They have a rating system. So before you enter the door, you see that the city or the state gave that particular restaurant a grade. So something like that would be easy for us to do. One other thing is establish a law or rule that all instructors in the school must have 5 years of behind-the-chair experience. At the same time, we must raise the starting hourly rate of our instructors, making it more realistic to their behind-the-chair earnings. I think that's a big discrepancy of what's going on. with hiring instructors in our schools, and I think it's just a bad road to go down. And what about a time frame in between someone finishing school and getting their license? Is there a way that we can give these guys like some sort of temporary type license?
It's something we've talked about, and it's something that we're definitely considering. And what I think we should do is go ahead and put it on the agenda for the next meeting now, for sure.
Because I did some research, and it says that, you know, the Gallup polls, you know, those guys that Gallup, in 2016, they came up with this, and this stat, and it said 45% of current employees plan to stay with their employer for less than 2 years. So if there's a 2-year time frame, and these guys put in 1,500 hours, and we make them wait 2 to 4 months, whatever it is between the time they finish, and I mean, we're just shortening that distance that they're going to stay with us. Then, I mean, we may lose them altogether. So we have these kids that could have so much great potential, and the fact that we're not putting them straight to work, I mean, we could lose them, the industry could lose them as a whole. And the ones that I see that are leaving, they all go to be a nurse, which we all need nurses and healthcare professionals. But it's just, I think it's sad to see people leave, you know, whenever it's something that we can, I think, contribute to.
You, just to be clear, you are suggesting having a temporary license prior to them being licensed completely?
Yes.
That wouldn't work, because then that would fall under them working without a license. Like, we have legislative rules that state that you have to actually be licensed to work in a salon, and we can't get past that. Like,
Why
it would
not?
be because a temporary, we don't have anything in place for like a temporary permit. So technically it would be a student working. You're considered a student, or you're considered licensed. So if you are a student, you can't work in a salon.
Right, but why couldn't we change the law? Because if all it is if you completed your 1,500 hours, you haven't passed your second test, you passed your written but not your practical, could we then give them 4 months?
Legislation says no. We would have, that would be something that's beyond us, is what I'm saying.
But could we propose new legislation?
Well, I think really this is something that we need to talk to our board council about, you know, as far as the interpretation of legislation. So why don't we have that on the agenda, Sherry, for you to have a look at it, and we can discuss that on our May 12th meeting. Remember, it is May 12th. I mean, June 12th.
But you know, I have found when I submit papers for the students, they're getting them in within a short period of time. What about you, John?
Right, that doesn't take that long.
No.
I agree. I think it's
Yeah.
the same thing. I notice, I know with some I do understand that some schools only will submit hours like on the 11th or something like that, and I think that causes part of the gap, and that your school probably doesn't do that, Ms. Hand, and that's a policy thing I think for schools to address.
Yeah, that's true.
But-
Because,
but-
now, after they take their test, I'm getting their license within 2 days.
And I think it works like that sometimes, but what I've seen what Mr. Guidry refers to is people who, there's a scheduling issue, that didn't get the hours on time, that they didn't get their paper, you know, they were a little slow to get their paperwork in, and then they go 3 months, and then they haven't touched hair, and then they get very discouraged, and that's the thing.
And they start waiting tables, or, then we lose them.
Yeah.
And I mean, my biggest thing is for a 20-year-old kid to spend $20,000 to go to school and not have the opportunity, or lose the opportunity based on time, or someone else's,
Because they let nurses work.
And doctors,
Yeah.
before they pass them, always under supervision.
Right.
Of course,
That's something
yeah.
I think that's something we would need to put in.
Yeah, and they can shampoo, you know what I mean? Now, maybe not do actual service, but they should be able to, participate,
Yeah, right.
And I mean, if the law was written, we have to honor the law, but we can certainly rewrite the law, you know what I mean?
That's how it works.
Yeah.
And Mr. Guidry, any more from your suggestions?
Yeah, so let me just, I have one more thing and then I'll be done. So a piece of paper and paying dues does not make me a professional. Adhering to the highest standards in the United States and continuing to perfect my craft makes me a professional. So my challenge to you guys is to separate ourselves from the group of Cosmo boards. Be a rebel. The spirit of wanting to rebel is something that we need to embrace and encourage. We need to stop homogenizing our craftsmen and craftswomen as an industry. I'm sitting in front of you today and asking you to not only embrace a new era in our industry, but I am asking you to lead the way in creating a new era. It is our responsibility as professionals to encourage change, encourage education, and encourage health, and to encourage a new direction for this industry. So that's all I have to say.